The reasons for U.S. involvement in World War I is ZPLAN.
Hello everybody and welcome to Chapter 4, Lesson 4 on why the United States gets involved in World War I. Last lesson we talked about the background of the war, and now we're getting into why did the United States get involved in this stupid war.
Call it the front round? Because you have the background?
What?
No, this should be their front round.
Alright, so we gave you some background on the war, and now we're going to do some front ground.
Back?
Foreground, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Foreground. This is the foreground.
Foreground.
Why do we get involved in this war?
The Lusitania Sink.
So, why do we get involved in this? One of the first things is when war breaks out, we mentioned that this war has a lot of new technologies in it. Machine guns, tanks, planes, barbed wire, chemical weapons. I'm just hitting my fingers, I'm not even counting really.
No.
But one of them is also submarines. Now we see the beginning of submarine warfare. Submarine warfare is very dangerous warfare. If you're in the submarine, it is
scary.
Yeah, your odds of surviving just being in the submarine are pretty slim, but it also means that now you have this new weapon that changes shipping and naval transportation in general.
Those guys who were in the submarine used to be out there for 3 months, and then they'd come back and they'd be off for 3 months. Yeah, it was really bad.
They smell good.
Bad.
And they started to attack boats that were not military vessels or naval vessels in the Navy, but they would attack boats that were transporting things that were necessary for the war effort.
To the Allies.
To the Allies. And so the German submarines would attack British ships and ships that were going to Britain with supplies.
And they had the best Navy in the world at the time, so they could keep our ships from actually going to Germany to help them.
Right.
So we end up just helping Britain and the Allies rather than it being fair because they're stopping all this stuff.
Because that's business. So
yeah.
Part of America's business is just to keep business going. We sell things to the British, and the British stop us from selling things to the Germans. So we are selling things to the British, and the Germans are trying to stop that with their submarines. And in 1915, the war starts in 1914. One of the biggest mistakes the Germans make is they attack a boat called the Lusitania.
The largest ship in the world at the time, bigger than the Titanic, from the same company, those lucky buggers. They lose the Titanic, then they lose the Lusitania.
And Guillermo Marconi had a ticket for both those.
That's right.
But they sink this passenger ship because it is carrying supplies for the British, kind of secretly. So
yeah,
it's like
they deny it.
It's like a Carnival Cruise Line ship smuggling weapons to somebody else. So there are weapons on board bound for England. That's why the Germans attack the ship. And they torpedo it. It sinks. It sinks faster than they thought it would, and there are few survivors. It sinks just off the coast of Ireland.
A couple hundred Americans are lost.
And so that creates a huge outcry in America that's already biased against Germany. So this war that we don't want to take sides in, Americans are starting to take sides against Germany in favor of the British because the Germans sunk this boat, the Lusitania.
Political ties to Great Britain.
The other thing that would make us want to take sides against Germany is the fact that Germany is a dictatorship. They have a Kaiser. Kaiser being the same word as Caesar or Tsar. It means like they have an emperor. So the Germans are not a democracy at this time, and neither is Austria-Hungary, and neither is the Ottoman Empire. So we have an inclination, a desire to kind of stick with England, even though England has a queen and a king at the time. Because they are a republic, they have a constitution, they have a democracy, but they also are part monarchy too. But because they're a democracy too, we want to support them. The Allied powers are not completely democratic. The Russians are not a democracy. They're going to have a revolution, a communist revolution in 1917 that's going to take them out of the war. But we do like England because we have a political connection to them. Their government is structured like our government, and that makes us kind of want to support the democracy.
The Allies owe us money.
Normally a war ends when you run out of people or money or materials. Normally with money you can buy more materials. But this war is allowed to go on for years because the Allies and the Central Powers both are able to access unlimited money. But the Allied powers especially are able to access American banks and borrow money and borrow money and borrow money. And so they end up borrowing billions of dollars from United States banks. What that means is if they lose, if the British lose, if the Allied powers lose, American banks lose all the money they've invested in the Allied powers. And so another reason to support the Allies would be they owe us money.
Yeah, we couldn't afford to have that happen because it would have ruined
that would destroy the economy.
Our economy.
Zimmerman and Telegram.
And the Z, the thing that kind of finally ends it, is the Germans, as the war is going on for 3 years and everyone's getting tired, they're wondering why is this thing still going on? They can't crack the code of trench warfare.
And plus the Americans are now helping so much that the Germans are like, man, we got to somehow get the Americans out of this because their economy is so good, they're so powerful as an industrial nation, that if they keep staying in this, we're bound to lose. So we got to somehow get them out of this war. And
the plan was to send a note to Mexico. And Mexico is a country that's already lost a lot to the United States. Southwest territories, so California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas is land that all would have belonged to Mexico in a different historical timeline. And the Germans are saying, if you can help us, if America does come into the war, if you help us and you attack America, we will guarantee you the Southwest United States.
After we win.
After we win. Now, Mexico had no interest in that.
Who'd they send that to?
But the telegram was sent from a German foreign minister, was it Arthur? Arthur Zimmerman. He sends it at the United States Embassy. So he goes to the U.S. Embassy because they're the only ones who still have a transatlantic wire that goes to the United States. And he sends a telegram to Mexico. However, the British have been eavesdropping on the American embassy.
That's not good.
They've tapped into our transatlantic cable, and they are intercepting our communications. And they overhear they intercept the German code, and they have cracked the code. And now it just takes all the American anger and frustration and just directs it right at Germany, who sank the Lusitania, who are fighting against England, who is a democracy like us. England, who's been borrowing money from us, and ultimately that ends up with the final end of ZPLAN, that we just can't stay neutral anymore. There's too much going on. There's money on the line. There's an incident like Lusitania. There's an enemy threatening to stab you in the back with a Zimmerman telegram, and so that all adds up to in 1917, the United States Congress, under President Woodrow Wilson's request, declares war on Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire.
And what's interesting, we had all these sticky notes with dates on them that we never used. They've just been sitting down here because we're trying to remember when this happened, when that happened. I mean, most of it we know. But
okay, so there we go. Bye, guys.
See ya. Ciao.
The reason for U.S. involvement in World War I is ZPLAN. The reasons for U.S. involvement is World War I. For the ZPLAN.
Okay.
The reason for U.S. involvement. Oh, I forgot. The reasons for U.S. involvement is. Wait, no, it's World War One. It's.
You're good.
Let's check. Okay.
Ready?
Political. The reasons for World War One. Darn it, U.S. Welcome to Chapter 4, Lesson 4. You were supposed to